Welcome to Winners, Wallets, and Worldviews, the only show that's going to teach you
how to be somebody.
Where in your life did you learn that you're not good enough?
Take what you're most passionate about and what you're most fearful of, and what is the plan to overcome that fear, and what is the plan to enact that passion.
Do you think, so just someone's an enemy of the United States, that means that their value is no longer,
zero.
They have no more value.
They have
no value to it.
So therefore you have to say that you fundamentally believe that the ethics driving everything the United States does is above the standard.
I think you're trying to
of
twist
the
some
enemy.
words right now, AJ.
What do you mean?
No, I mean AJ's onto something. I think, it's you got to be very careful about how you define an enemy of the United States, because if you apply those terms too liberally, then you could really just justify even killing American citizens, because there's plenty of American citizens who don't necessarily agree with some of the values that you guys might stand for, right? So then where do you draw the line? Right? Is it just because they're an American citizen they're safe?
Agreed.
Right? And then on top of that, at some point you have to actually make some sort of, foreign policy or a military policy to combat those people who I would say is more of a security threat as opposed to a values-based disagreement. And then at that point you have to commit resources and, most importantly, like soldiers' lives to that cause. And is it really worth it, is the question that I would ask. Like, is the benefit that you're getting out of attempting to take those people out worth the cost or the potential cost? Because in the grand scheme of things, like, yeah, the United States hasn't lost that many soldiers when you compare it to other historical wars, but that doesn't matter to that person's family. Like,
right.
they lost 100% and more of what they had.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, you can't just look at the numbers blindly. Like, you have to look at the human cost.
Well, tell us, Jorge, if you don't mind, tell us those two stories you have. So tell us the first one.
Okay, so
where you thought you were gonna die.
Yeah. So okay, so I'll start with that one, and then the one with the Mark 19.
Yeah.
Okay. So. Okay. So. So the year was 2017. I think it was like May. I think. And I was in Nangarhar province, which was at the time a big. It had a big concentration of ISIS in Afghanistan, and so my platoon's mission there was to assist the United States and the Afghan special forces with security so that they could perform offensive operations against ISIS. So we had a lot of resources committed to us, mainly like aircraft that would drop either guided munitions or just really big bombs from 500 pounds to 1,000 pound to 2,000 pound bombs. This was actually the same location where the Moab was dropped. That was the mother of all bombs.
That's Mike's favorite bomb.
Yeah. Now, normally when you're dropping these bombs, you have a controller with you that's either from the United States Army, the United States Air Force, and they designate the target and they provide guidance to the pilot and say, okay, you're going to drop this bomb, in this manner so that it's safe for us. However, this particular day, unbeknownst to us, those aircraft had been assigned to another controller who was working in a neighboring valley. And what ended up happening is that other controller gave him guidance to drop those munitions basically right above our heads and going into the other valley. So we were completely safe. However, we didn't know that, because very much like the Acme cartoons where you start hearing...
So it actually sounds like that?
Oh, yeah. That was literally the most terrifying moment of my entire life, because it took so long for that whistle to stop, and as soon as we started...
How long is this thing going for? Like, how many seconds?
I honestly couldn't tell you, because it felt like forever. The first thing I hear is I start hearing the whistle, and everyone just kind of like pauses and starts looking around. And when I can't remember even who said it first, but you just start hearing screams saying, "Get down! Everybody get down! Get to cover!" we just dove behind anything we could find. Like, I ended up jumping into it was like a little like adobe house, and I dove behind like a little like cement pillar, and I mean freaking 500, even a 500-pound bomb, and we didn't know if it was 500 pounds, 1,000 pounds or more. Like, we would have been toast if it hit us anyways. But like, and in that moment, it was just a long enough moment where all I could think to myself was like, okay, I mean, this is it. I didn't know this was how I was gonna die. I didn't think I would ever see myself like dying, but this is it. Okay, and I just it was like I felt my body very, very tense, and I just kept looking around, and everyone was just. I mean, you could just see the looks in everyone's faces. Like, everyone had it on their minds. Like, we are so fucked. And so finally, the whistle changes from, and the next thing you hear is, and the windows actually blew out. So there was windows in that little building, and they blew out from the concussion, and you could feel the pressure on your chest. And at that time, we realized that the bomb had landed in the valley next to us, and everyone just, like, for a moment was like, holy shit, we just did. I mean, obviously we were.
What's that like?
We were live.
Like, tell me more about the time you're like, fuck, this is it.
So
was it just
like in my mind, like I had it's amazing. Like, looking back now, it's amazing how much feeling I had in it. But then again, maybe some of this is kind of in retrospect. But like, part of me was saying, like, I wonder what my family is gonna hear. You know, like that. Like, a lot of my thoughts went towards my family. Like, I didn't really think about. Like, I didn't think about God. I didn't think about my friends. I didn't think about, like, anything in my life. Like, I thought, oh my God, this is it, and I'm not gonna see my family again. And this is just. I felt so helpless in that moment. Like, I wish I could do more, but there's literally nothing I could have done. So that to end the story, we ended up telling. We asked the other controller, you know, to give us confirmation of what they were doing. Found out, in hindsight, that we were completely safe. But just the acoustics of that terrain and where the bomb started getting dropped at, like, none of us could have known that. It just sounded like it was coming right on top of it.
Oh, that's fucking nuts, dude.
Yeah. So that I would say in my life, that was probably one of the most terrifying moments. And I will say that. While, like, PTSD is a very, very strong word and reserved for people who, like, definitely have issues, like, I did have trouble hearing, like, certain whistles, certain, like, tones of, like, you know.
Do you still have trouble with that?
If I'm not expecting it, like, last night when the firecrackers went off, I definitely gave a little bit of a jump. But, I mean, one like, I don't have a problem necessarily because I don't start panicking, you know, thankfully. And that is a very, very serious issue in the Army, is people who have anxiety problems. But if I'm not expecting it, I do get a little bit of a jump, and especially with that type of whistle, because that whistle, well, various types of whistles. There's one for bombs, like, and then rockets have another very distinct sound. It almost sounds like like, it's kind of hard to describe, but it's very distinct. So when you hear it, you hit the ground as fast as you can, because it could hit somewhere near you, and that's a very, like, terrifying moment, because you just know it's coming close.
Fucking A, dude.
Yeah.
I love that story. I mean, it sucks that you had to live through it, but it's just like, people don't understand that, you know, people are over there right now going through these types of same scenarios and these same things. So it's, like, really interesting to hear what that's like, and, like, when you think it's your final moments, but, you know, thank God it wasn't, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very grateful that we made it out of there alive. I will say, though, we were unfortunate to have 3 soldiers killed in action. They were killed actually in the same neighboring valley that I'm talking about, in a insider attack. There was an Afghan special forces soldier who ended up betraying them and shot 4 soldiers, 3 of which died. And one has now been medically retired from the Army. So that's definitely something that weighs heavy on my heart. And anytime we talk about, like, sending people to combat and, oh, let's get into a war with this country or that country, like, I just think about those 3 soldiers and the effect that it had on their family. Like even today, like I know the widow of one of the soldiers that died, and like it's a very real effect that lasts their entire life, and you can't help but wonder like what kind of life they would have led if they would have continued in their life. Like 2 of those soldiers were fathers. One of them was single, unmarried, in his early 20s. Like he was pretty much straight out of high school when he joined the Army. Like what kind of life could he have had? He never had a chance to fall in love and have kids and all that. So it's easy to say, yeah, let's go to war, but in my mind it is important to keep those things in mind, the human cost.
Yeah. Dude, tell us the second story. Your Mark 19 story.
Okay, so
I want to break this one down too. This will be fun.
Okay, so this is fun story to tell, I guess.
I mean, fireworks are going off as we're sitting in this van. That's how American this discussion's going to be.
Absolutely. Today. Let's not forget, this is the little Mexican who could.
Mike's asleep right now.
Yeah. Well, so we're in the same valley, and
I gotta take a piss.
Mike's heard this story many times before, so he's not missing out.
Jorge killed.
You're gonna give it away, dude?
Taliban.
Jorge
Fuck
killed
those
people.
Taliban.
Jorge killed people. I gotta kill them.
That's amazing.
So
giving away the story.
So my platoon is again in the same valley that
it's like drunk history kind of.
Yeah, it is.
Oh my gosh, that's a really good point.
It is.
It's kind of like drunk history.
I love that show.
Jorge killed people.
That's history.
Jorge killed fucking people.
So
He doesn't care.
He just talks.
No, he does care. It's just that
cares?
it was for America.
Can we let Jorge tell his story so we can ask him these questions?
Get the fuck out of here.
Get the fuck out of here.
All right, Jorge.
All right, here we go.
Mark 19.
So, again, same place, Nangarhar Valley of Afghanistan. We're in Mohmand Valley, or Nangarhar Province, Mohmand Valley. We had occupied this building where we used the rooftop to create little fighting positions where we could, observe for enemy movement and then engage if we saw them in our area, or otherwise if we were engaged by the enemy, we could respond quickly. And some of the weapons that we had up there was a 50 caliber machine gun, a 40 millimeter grenade launcher. That's an automatic weapon that can shoot close to 2,000 meters in distance. At the time we had 2 soldiers on guard, and we had one on the 40 millimeter grenade launcher and one on binoculars. So while one is ready to respond, the other is on the binoculars, taking a look around, making sure everything's good to go. Well, I go up there to the rooftop to kind of check on them, see if they need anything, and one of the soldiers asked for I can't remember if it was like if he needed water, if he needed a restroom break or something, and it was the individual on the weapon system, which normally you would switch in somebody to cover down the weapon system, but given the circumstances at the time, like it was a pretty low key time for us, so we weren't really expecting much, and we kept the guy on the binoculars, which is going to help out a lot more at the distances that we were working with. So before we know it, there's a couple shots that ring out, and they're coming. If I'm facing forward, they come in from our left. And so, I hit the ground. I'm trying to figure out exactly where they're coming from. Coincidentally, the guy that had the binoculars was looking in that direction. And he says, I see them. Well, in that, I had a split moment decision to make, right? Because the guy that had the weapon system is currently downstairs. To get anybody up there is going to take time that we don't have. We will need to respond as quickly as possible. So either I take the binoculars, try to observe the targets so that my soldier can shoot the weapon system, or I leave my guy who's currently looking at the enemy and I hop on the weapon system and fire. So I decide that the risk of losing the target was too great, and I left him on the binoculars. I hop down on the 40 millimeter grenade launcher, and I say, walk me onto the target, which means I'm going to shoot in their general direction, and then using your binoculars, tell me which way to direct my fire. So I shoot a couple rounds. He says, 20 meters to the left. Shoot a couple more rounds. He says, subtract a couple meters, which means bring in the fire a little bit closer. And he says, all right, right there. And so I just start unloading, quite a few rounds of 40 millimeter grenades. And, after just a little bit of firing, I look at the soldier, was like, hey man, like, are they gone? He's like, yeah, you killed both of them. So, those 2 ISIS fighters that, I had the opportunity to engage and destroy, and that was just a drop in the bucket compared to what my platoon did, which over the course of about 4 months, we engaged and killed 27 ISIS fighters, and then that's also a drop in the bucket compared to what the rest of the United States Special Forces did, what all our weaponized drones did, F-16s and helicopters did. So, but that's the little piece of the pie that we got.
What was that feeling like, killing somebody?
It was weird. Like, I thought it was gonna feel like it was really exciting in the sense that we engaged the enemy, we took no casualties, we inflicted 2 casualties, so we're just that little bit much safer. But it's not like I don't know. I didn't think of myself any different from before that. It's just doing my job, I guess.
Yeah. Was it like a weird experience? Like.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the weirdest part about it is, there's 2 people that no longer exist on this planet, and it's because of you. And I'm not going to jail, so that's a good thing. And they wish to inflict harm on my soldiers.
Yeah, no, I get you.
So, I mean, that's just kind of weird, that you subtract it from the population. Normally people add to the population.
Yeah, like Mike's going to be doing here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But he's not raising ISIS fighters, so...
These are weird experiences just because, like, one is like, I was almost that person that faced death, and then the second one is like, no, I was the person that inflicted death on 2 people. So it's like, in one, what was it, 9-month deployment?
Yeah, it was a 9-month deployment, but the heavy combat portion started, I think it was in March or April, and continued through like late June, early July. Now, like, I don't know, some people, I guess, come into the Army and, like, the only thing they really care about is, I want to go kill the enemies of the United States. Like, I was not one of those guys. So, like, my experience in the Army was not defined by whether or not I killed somebody.
Yeah.
So this, to me, was just an experience that, thankfully, I didn't have any sort of, like, moral or spiritual qualms over.
Yeah.
So I feel pretty good about it, but it's not a story that I share lightly, just because not everyone has had that opportunity, and I don't wish to make anyone feel any less about their service to the military, because the important thing is that you serve. Like, it doesn't matter if you deploy, it doesn't matter if you get into combat or not. It really doesn't. Because you're still a deterrence to the enemies of the United States. Like, that's the most important thing, right? And then the other thing is, like, for people who aren't in the military, it might make them feel uncomfortable because they've never met somebody that's legitimately killed somebody, and that might not sit well with them. And I don't wish to make anyone feel uncomfortable,
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, that's some heavy shit.
Well,
and to lighten it up, I guess Joe is completely asleep.
Yeah. Well, AJ, I do appreciate you letting me share that story with your listeners.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think I find it interesting.
I will say, I don't think I've ever told this story to my parents, so I might actually take your podcast and use that as a...
I'd like you guys to listen to this.
Yeah. This is the Army's version of coming out of the closet, like, surprise, I killed someone. so...
Marissa, why don't you move up into Mike's seat, because he's probably asleep too. And
Hop up in here.
Oh, is he looking out there?
Oh shit.
Oh no.
So, here, Miguel,
with
let me ask you a question, right? So, in contrast to me, I suspect that you are much closer to the personality that lives to inflict harm, vicious harm on the enemies of the United States.
That'd be Mike too.
And that would also be Mike, right? So given what I've just said, like, how does that make you feel? Like, what's your take on it? Like, you haven't had that chance to deploy for no fault of your own. It's just right time, right place, and you're just not there, but you can't do anything about that. So like, how do you feel?
In terms of like your experiences?
Well, in terms of
Well, you joined the army because you want to stack up bodies, and Jorge didn't, and here he is stacking up bodies. And
I mean, I wouldn't really say I joined the army to stack up bodies. I joined the army because you have this. I mean, we're a lot of us sitting here are the last of a generation that was at the time of 9/11 old enough to kind of understand and kind of, I guess, carried that. I feel like I carried that with me all the way and through.
Yeah, actually.
High school. That was
Right.
that was something that like my parents talked about, something I remembered pretty vividly, even though I was across the country. Pretty vivid memories of it. Whereas a lot of my soldiers nowadays are born after the fact, or they were born too young to remember. So that's just something, I don't know, that I said, for me, I guess I was willing to go and to fight and to kill someone if I had to. I wouldn't say it was like top of my list. It was really just to defend your ideals. Really, for me, it's always been about my family. Everything's been about my family. So, I mean, like I said, people that have had the opportunity, I guess more power to to deploy and fight the enemies of the United States. More power to them. I wouldn't say I guess envy you in like a jealous manner. He said I understand, in my perspective, it's all right time, right place, and that every door that's been an opportunity that's been opened up for me, I've jumped right through and I've done everything that I can. That opportunity never presented itself. I wouldn't say when you talk about it, would you like willingly, like excitedly take someone's life away? No. Would I hesitate to do it? Probably not. But like I said, at the same time, I'm not like excited to do it. It's just something that, again, like you understand in the perspective of your job, like that's what you signed up to do. That there's just someone standing on the other side, whether it be they have a different political aspect or they just, they're just the wrong dude on the other side of the line. Like they just grew up in Afghanistan and I grew up in the U.S. and that's just the way it is. Sometimes that's the way it lines up.
Yeah, for sure.
But that everyone's defending an ideal, or they're defending something that they hold dear to them. I mean, that's kind of like the whole thing of the 4th of July, of everything that we're sitting here, like we're celebrating these ideals, the right to be free, your country, your family, all these things. And that's all really it is about, honestly, being in the Army, is having the opportunity to defend that. If you have the opportunity to go and deploy, that's awesome. More, like I said, more power to you. I said, taking someone's life, I wouldn't take it lightly.
Right.
It's definitely something that so for me, again, not having been deployed, haven't been deployed, but I talked to a lot of guys who joined the Army in like 2002, 2001, 2003, 4, early, spent most of their careers in the Army, enlisted guys, now senior NCOs, and they said like they wouldn't wish some of their deployments on like their worst enemies. Like they're not something fun. Killing people's not something that, it is an adrenaline rush, and it's something that like gets addicting. But when you sit back and retrospectively think about it, like killing people is not something that like most cultures hold as like a idealistic thing, you know.
I mean, I can definitely like.
I said, I'm not really envious of it. If I would have had the opportunity.
So I want to play devil's advocate here.
You're a lover, not a fighter.
Hit it.
Yes.
Hit it.
But so this war will be ongoing for 20 years in 2021. Now, we've been told through the media that ISIS has built up their core, has built up their military through lies about us.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we know we're not being lied about them?
So you're introducing a perspective problem here, right?
Yeah.
So what does that look like?
So I can start on this. Someone wants to pop in after me, but and not to walk the line too much of politics on this, but a lot of people obviously understand that the war.
No politics. I'm just kidding.
No politics. Like I'm treading the line, but like war in Afghanistan was obviously directly towards 9/11. War in Iraq, a bit more skewed on why the reasons of that war were started. Again, whether you wanted to believe what the administration told you, but it came out after that there was different reasons. So like I said, it's hard to like tread the line of politics, but
No politics.
And this is one of those issues that like politicians drive our reasons to go to war, and the army at the end of the day, us as soldiers.
Your job's to execute, not to decide.
My job's to execute, not to decide, and that it becomes a moral conflict at certain times. Like he said, when I am educated enough to know why I'm going to fight, even though there's a reason that I'm being told, I'm smart enough to know whether that reason's true or not. And then having to be able to tell a legitimate reason to your soldiers, it becomes like a moral conflict within yourself of being like, they look at you and they say, hey, sir, why are we doing this? And you can either give them the bullshit answer, which is the answer that you've been told them, or you can give them the truth, which sometimes directly conflicts guidance that you're given, which you're not, being in the army, you're not supposed to do. You're supposed to support your chain of command. And that's where a weird thing of like, this is an ongoing, like you said, Marissa, it's an ongoing war, still going. Who knows how long it's going to keep going for, this conflict. Definitely, I have seen some things of, and some obviously evidence of ISIS like building up, and there are threats against the United States. But it's a weird thing where it's almost like some of these threats are self-inflicted, that we've created more enemies by keeping ongoing wars and kind of sticking our nose into places.
Yeah, but I would also say it's very, very multidimensional, right?
Yeah.
So while we're fighting ISIS, you could argue all day whether or not they are a threat to our country, but that might not even matter. It perhaps what matters is our military might being demonstrated for other countries with which we are not at war. So
yeah, there's a lot of things.
Yeah, like other world powers. With
sure,
avoiding politics. I'm not going to name any countries, but there are countries out there who are paying attention. They're saying, well, they're deploying with a lot of might, so perhaps we don't pick a fight with them.
Yeah.
And maybe that's part of the reason.
It's
right?
more of like the strategy could be differently interpreted, but
Yeah.
like the one strategy is, we're just going to eliminate them off the face of the earth, but the other strategy might be like, no, we're here to support somebody else.
Yeah.
Or we're here to demonstrate, flex our muscles, or whatever, right?
We're doing like nation building or something like that.
Right.
Now, I would say that it is kind of frustrating not knowing the truth, as you say, and I know you're just playing devil's advocate, but I've thought about this too a lot as well. So I think that the most important thing to do as an American citizen is to vote people into office that you trust, because they are the ones who are going to get the evidence and make the decisions as to whether or not to go to war.
Yeah.
And then for our current situation, whether or not to continue the war, change the direction of the war, end the war, or whatever other options there might be. So like, if we keep voting people without knowing what they stand for and really believing in them, then like that's just making the system worse, right? Because then at that point it's all a matter of perspective, right? They're going to tell us what they want us to believe, as opposed to telling us the ground truth and saying, I'm taking this decision because of this evidence, which, and again, like, some of this stuff is classified, so they're not going to be able to share that with us anyways.
And I just think it's interesting, like, where, like, kind of how Miguel said, where we've stuck our nose into areas maybe we shouldn't have, and maybe it's just to show our power and what we can do as, like, a nation and with our military, to show other countries who are watching us what we're capable of. But in the end scheme, like, now we're creating enemies that are building up in a sense where they feel threatened in a way we felt threatened.
So that's been an argument, and I guess and that's like, that gets into the political argument, right? One of the political argument, like, on one side of it, it's like, look, we have to defend and wipe this nation off the face of the earth, but it's like, as we keep doing that, it's just going to build up more hatred against ourselves, and that's basically the big political discussion.
It validates what they think.
But I think to Jorge's point, like, regardless of what your political views are, I think the most important thing is that you have to put your trust into somebody that is interested in pursuing truth, okay? So to avoid these conspiracy theories that we talk about, that there's like these power elites, that they're just shoveling perspective, that we're living in the Truman Show, that this is just some kind of freaking air bubble and everything's just a big facade around us. In order to avoid that, we have to make sure that we're putting these people in power to pursue truth, not to pursue an agenda, not to pursue some type of power corruption. And I think, like, I don't care what your political views are, you got to look at somebody that's interested in getting to the right answer, whatever costs. I think if we can keep doing that as people, I think we're eventually going to get to the point where it's like, we're going to find out the good will survive. The good will rise out of that. Truth will pursue, right? And it gets back into what is truth, and that's I think the argument, or that's the ethical philosophy we need to push forward. And I think I think you guys are dead on, and that's really where we talk about all these fun conspiracy theories, right? And like that's how we can avoid falling into a situation like that, right? Nazi Germany, there's people around the corner that didn't even know there was Holocaust. There was concentration camps going on. They thought the smell was from other industries, and like the smell of rotting human flesh they thought was from different industries, and they were being told that, and they believed that. And it's like, we can't be that asleep as people. We need to challenge everything we see, and we do that though by at least allowing the power that you have, which is to vote. You have the power with your dollar to vote with your dollar, to support companies or whatever that you have the same values and ethics with. And I think that's where people need to be more awake, more alert. Don't just buy the shit because you're asleep. Buy the shit because you looked at it, you studied what it's all about, that kind of thing.
I think it's funny that people do more like research on things they're buying on Amazon through customer reviews than they do on their like the politicians they vote for. Like imagine if you were like trying to buy like, I don't know, like workout equipment, and you only buy based off of, you know, the color of the shirt or the shorts, like, but you don't care for like the material, you know, is it machine washable,
right.
Like, you know,
like the criteria is just always all
Red
fucked
only.
up. Yeah. Red, white,
So I
and
want to play devil's advocate one more time.
Yeah, I love this. Yeah.
What if there is a power above the power we elect in?